At CNN.com/30. This is CNN 30. Were you there?
I dedicate the news channel for America, the cable news network.
After 14 and a half months, only minutes to go now. Perhaps we're told very few minutes. Listen to those cheers.
So long as you both shall live.
When she got married in 1981, Sri Lanka went simply crazy over because she was a beautiful girl. We didn't have TV at that time, and I had to go to a friend's place to watch the wedding. It was the most thrilling episodes in my life.
On that fateful day, we were supposed to do a 3-part interview with her. We asked Mrs. Gandhi to come, and she was walking towards us when 2 of her security guards who were posted at the garden gates, they opened fire and shot her. And then we heard a second round of gunfire, and then one of the security guards came running towards us. His hands were on his face and he was shouting, "Mrs. Gandhi has been shot! Mrs. Gandhi has been shot!"
And here, this was once a 13-story condominium.
It was a very cold fall morning, in one of those typical fall mornings in Mexico City, that 19th of September 1985. I was 11 at the time. I was getting ready to go to school.
The earthquake started around 7:19 in the morning. We experienced a lot of earthquakes here, but this one started and continued, and we realized then it was getting stronger and stronger and stronger.
Our apartment, which was located on the 4th floor, started going side to side, and then all of a sudden, very violently going up and down, up and down, up and down.
The destruction was just pretty much everywhere. The hotel that was next to my apartment building, 11-story hotel, collapsed like a deck of cards onto my apartment building.
It was devastating. It looked like an atomic bomb had exploded throughout the downtown area of Mexico City.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff.
I was a young electrical engineering student at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. I watched the launch with a small group of friends. When I saw the first burst, I honestly didn't know what I was witnessing. My best friend Frank, who was standing next to me, did comprehend what had happened, and he said it exploded. At that point, I realized that the crew would probably not survive. I felt a very strong professional bond to those scientists and engineers who worked in the aeronautics and space industry, particularly as an American. I was overcome with a thought and a feeling which I will never forget. Oh my God, we failed them. I took it personally. I took it very personally.
Obviously a major malfunction.
Number 1 on all Soviet citizens' minds, the Chernobyl disaster.
Of course, I remember the Chernobyl accident in 1986, but a question, I suppose, cropped up as to whether we should actually go to Chernobyl or not. It was something I really wanted to do, but we were aware that there were going to be risks. There was obviously still a lot of radiation around. And I remember actually, as we approached the exclusion zone, getting that feeling of, this is it, we can't turn back from this, I'm actually going into this now. And then I remember actually being around the deserted funfair, the abandoned kindergarten. I kind of thought, this is a fantastic photo shoot and it's a great opportunity, but the only reason that I can do this is because something really tragic, something really bad happened here.
Lockerbie was a town locked in grief. I was one of the correspondents that went to Lockerbie, Scotland. This has been a grim Christmas for Lockerbie. I remember walking the debris field and just seeing the tiny bits of aircraft, personal belongings strewn all over the countryside. Just so many bits, except for the cabin that carried the pilot. And I just remember walking up to it and seeing just how large it loomed there on the ground. That it seemed to me, having fallen from the sky, there it was intact. It literally dug a huge crater into a neighborhood, killing the families that lived there. It was the saddest Christmas that I have ever experienced in my life.
More than a day after the attack on Tiananmen Square, it is almost impossible to keep track of the number of dead and injured. The capital itself remains in a state of shock fear and profound anger over what can only be described as a massacre.
I was attending high school in Hong Kong when the Tiananmen Square protests occurred. I remember watching the stories unfold on TV with repeated images of a man in front of a tank.
East Germany has thrown all of its borders open to its citizens.
I was in a bar on November 9th, late at night, and when suddenly everybody said the wall had fallen, my friend and I, Alex, we just took off straight back to our dorm and packed a backpack and got ready to hitchhike north to Berlin. We went up there. There were thousands of Trabants that were trying to get out of East Germany, and we went straight to Berlin, and we were caught up in traffic and walked straight to Brandenburg Gate. And as I was standing next to the wall, I got separated from my friend in all of the pushing and shoving, and a guy next to me came up with a ladder. And so he climbed up, and I followed him, and next thing I know, I'm on top of the wall.
It was incredibly exciting. I remember people dancing and singing on top of the wall on TV. Chancellor Kohl gave his speech, but above all else, this symbol, physical symbol of power that had been there all my life, fell that day.
I had felt that something was coming, and when it finally occurred and the chance to be there, I thought, I'm not sure that if I'll ever in my entire life again experience a world historical event like this.
Nelson Mandela, a free man taking his first steps into a new South Africa.
CNN 30. I was there when Nelson Mandela made his famous walk into history. I'll never forget the moment. And if there are moments that mark our lives, this was a moment for me. It was at exactly 14 minutes past 4, an hour later than planned. Suddenly, the crowd went berserk. I mean, people were screaming and yelling, people were toy-toying, which is a particular South African kind of dance. And we just couldn't believe it. I mean, there was the man, Nelson Mandela. I grew up knowing his name, and there he was, larger than life, holding the hand of his wife, Winnie Mandela at the time, and there they were walking out of prison. I mean, when I think of that moment now, it still sends shivers down my spine. Nelson Mandela taking his first steps to freedom.
Something is happening outside. The skies over Baghdad have been illuminated.
Atlanta, this is Holloman. I don't know whether you're able to hear me now or not, but you can perhaps hear the sound of bombs in the background.
When the first Gulf War started in 1991, I was working on a Saudi Arabian military base. And I remember our boss, who was a Brit, gathered everybody together for this special briefing. And he said something like, Saddam doesn't have the capability, he hasn't got the accuracy, certainly not the range to stand any chance of striking this base with a Scud missile. So we all sort of looked at each other and thought, well, okay, fair enough, that's good, we want to hear that. And then, the next thing we know, this Scud lands just down the road.
Repeating once again our top story, Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev has been removed from power, and there are tanks now in the streets of Moscow.
You know, the Soviet Union looked on as Eastern Europe, one country after another, was collapsing. People were saying, well, why not us?
As a young girl, I remember Communist Party members were setting fire to their party IDs. These were the people who had spent their lives serving the interests of the Soviet Union. It was definitely a turning point, the beginning of the end, and it made the collapse of the communist rule in Azerbaijan only a matter of time.
The story that had a tremendous impact on my life was the Rwandan genocide. I was shocked, horrified, and deeply saddened by the systematic massacre of 800,000 people in less than 100 days.
The barbarity of these killings and the scope of the genocide have gone far beyond anything they ever expected could happen here.
My life can really be divided between my experiences before and after Rwanda genocide. I remember vividly people running around with machetes looking for others to kill. And the city was just littered with bodies.